The Persian Gulf itself is the one area where the Army is likely to have an important role in the decades ahead. The United States, as noted, has a deep-seated interest in making sure that no single country dominates that strategically important region. The main threat to do so is Iran, which of course is why the Reagan administration supported Saddam Hussein in the Iran-Iraq war that ran from 1980 to 1988. American policymakers can deal with threats in the Gulf in basically two ways. First, they can rely on other countries in the region to check an aggressor, as happened in the Iran-Iraq war. They can build and deploy U.S. military forces to handle the job. That's the second way. Those American forces can either be stationed outside of the region, over the horizon, as we used to say, or they can be stationed on the territory of an ally in the region. Regardless, those forces would be comprised of a substantial number of Army units, whether they were stationed in the region or outside of it. Some of you, I am sure, remember the Rapid Deployment Joint Task Force, the RDJTF, which the Carter and Reagan administrations established in the last decade of the Cold War to intervene in the Gulf if need be. It was comprised of 4 Army divisions, my memory's correct, the 9th and 24th Infantry Divisions and the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions, and the Cavalry Brigade. It also contained substantial numbers of Marines. Given America's dismal experience in the recent wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, the United States is likely to rely on other countries in the Gulf to check dangerous aggressors, rather than assuming that burden itself. Nevertheless, there will always be the possibility that the local powers cannot do the job, in which case the United States, and here we are talking mainly about the Army, will have to move in and remedy the problem. This is essentially what happened in the 1991 Gulf War. The United States and its allies intervened and threw the Iraqi army out of Kuwait because no local power had the will and the capability to reverse Saddam's aggression. All of this is to say that the Army is likely to matter in important ways for protecting America's interests in the Persian Gulf. Let me conclude this discussion of grand strategy with a few words about Europe. As noted, Europe will remain an area of strategic importance to the United States, but it will not command the attention from Washington that it has in the past. My sense is that how much attention future American policymakers pay to Europe will depend on how powerful China becomes in the decades ahead. If China's rapid rise continues, and that is not guaranteed, the United States will have its hands full containing China and will sharply reduce its presence in Europe, maybe even pull all of its troops out so it can focus its attention on Asia and the Persian Gulf. If that were to happen, it would have serious consequences for the Army, because the American pacifier in Europe, the more likely scenario, however, is that the United States will gradually and inexorably decrease its presence in Europe, which will leave the Army with a diminishing role in that region. My bottom line regarding grand strategy is that Asia is rapidly becoming the most important area of the world for the United States, and the Army will only have a small role there. The region where the Army is most likely to play an important role is the Persian Gulf, where a substantial body of U.S. land forces will still be needed to prevent a regional hegemon and counter Chinese influence. Europe, which has always been an Army-friendly theater, is not likely to be a major concern for the United States in the years ahead. I would now like to switch gears and talk about conquest and occupation in the developing world. As part of the so-called global war on terror, the United States has fought two major wars of conquest since 2001, one in Afghanistan and the other in Iraq. The American military went to war in Afghanistan in mid-October 2001, and by early December, it had toppled the Taliban from power and appeared to have won a quick and decisive victory. That led many people in the American national security community, and especially in the Bush administration, to think that the United States had found the magic formula for conquering countries in the developing world, effecting rapid regime change, and then getting out of town quickly so as to avoid a costly and difficult occupation. In the Iranian case, there is no serious threat of sending ground forces into Iran. And if the United States takes military action against Iran's nuclear facilities, it will be done with airstrikes and cruise missiles. As I like to say, it will be a drive-by shooting. But even so, it is evident that there is hardly any appetite for a war with Iran in the United States, be it with air power alone or not. That when you look at America's likely grand strategy in the next few decades, the Army is probably going to be the least important. Its role will certainly be limited in the Asia-Pacific region, which is likely to be the most important strategic area because China is located there. And this could have especially grim consequences for the Army if the Pentagon budget is severely constrained and China's economy grows at a rapid clip, necessitating an accelerated pivot to Asia. Of course, the Army can help its case by fashioning a clear and concise story that describes the threats to critical American interests that the Army is best suited to counter. But even there are significant limits to what can be done, because the future security environment is unlikely to involve the United States in major land wars. This is surely good news for the United States as a whole, but not for the Army's budget. Thank you.